Well, hello everyone, and welcome to our special spotlight sessions on Vietnam. This is entitled Classroom-Based Assessment in Vietnam, Teacher Attitudes, Practices, and Needs. I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by Nguyen from University of Languages and International Studies, a member of Vietnam National University, and David Martin, my colleague at the British Council in Vietnam. Our two excellent speakers today will introduce you to a joint project between a UK university and a Vietnam university in the fields of language assessment literacy, and that is due to start very soon in January 2022. So it's on a very new and exciting project. Now, allow me to give you a quick reminder that all your questions and comments in the chat box will be monitored and discussed with our speakers at the Q&A activity for the last 10 minutes. Without further ado, I will hand over to our speaker, David and Quynh. Please start by sharing your screen. David, you're mute.
Thank you, Q, for that reminder. As Q says, my name is Davide Gilmartin. I'm the academic manager at the British Council English for Education Systems section here at the British Council in Hanoi, Vietnam. And just before I hand over to Quynh, who is our main speaker today, I just want to say a few words about how this research project came about. We work very closely with Vietnam's National Foreign Languages Project, which is part of the Ministry of Education and Training. And in June this year, we signed a collaboration plan with the NFLP. And we have four main activity areas in our work as part of EES, English for Education Systems, globally, in the region and here in Vietnam. So as part of that collaboration plan, we focus on all four areas: research and insight, capacity building and CPD, stakeholder engagement, as well as consultancies surrounding assessment, curriculum, and resources. So as part of the collaboration plan, in terms of research and insight, in the last few weeks, in fact, we've selected two research proposals, which we'll be looking at and developing over the next 12 months, as Q says, as partnerships between UK and Vietnamese higher education institutions. One is looking at online ELT in public schools, and the second is looking at assessment. And that's why we're here today, and that's why Quynh is here for us today. So Quynh, just to give a few words of introduction before I hand over, she's the founding director of the Vietnam National University ULIS Center for Testing and Assessment. She's currently the director of the Department of Research, Science and Technology. And also she's been very heavily involved in the research and development of VSTEP, the Vietnamese standardized test of English proficiency, as well as being the current vice president of the AALA, the Asian Association of Language Assessment. So we're very honored, very privileged to have Quynh with us here today. And as Q said before, please do add any questions that you have or any comments into the session chat box, and hopefully we'll have about 5 or 10 minutes at the end for Q and myself and Nguyen to discuss those. As we say in these things, without further ado, I'll hand over to Quynh. Thank you, Quynh.
Thank you very much, David. Could you please stop share? Yeah, and I will share mine. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much again, David, again. And first of all, I would like to thank the British Council for awarding a grant for the joint research between the University of Huddersfield and my university, University of Languages and International Studies, Vietnam National University Hanoi, on classroom-based assessment in Vietnam. And I would like also to thank the organizing committee of the New Directions for giving me the chance to present on behalf of the project team between the UK team from the University of Huddersfield, which is headed by Dr. Sheehan, and Vietnam team from ULIS, which is headed by myself, Dr. Nguyen, as the team leader, to be presenting at this country spotlight on Vietnam, which is actually a soft launching of our project. And the project will be officially started and launched in January next year. I'd like to start with the background of our research. As you may know, research in classroom-based assessment practices is often situated under the umbrella term language assessment literacy, LAL. And we adopted the definition of LAL proposed by Fulcher 2012, which covers the knowledge, skills, and ability required to design, develop, maintain, or evaluate large-scale standardized and or classroom-based tests, as well as the familiarity with test processes and awareness of principles and concepts that guides and underpin practice, including ethics and codes of practice. And similar to, we also follow the research by Barry, Sheehan, and Munro 2017. Our research will be informed also by a social constructivist model of learning and meaning making, with the classroom representing the community of practice. And our research focuses on the sociocultural context in relation to actual assessment literacy practices in the language classrooms, since an investigation into what is happening in classes may be of little value without exploring why it is happening. And here are the major findings by Barry, Sheehan, and Munro in 2017. They found in their research of more than 50 teachers that teachers used a range of assessment practices, but consider these practices to be part of teaching and not as assessment. Teachers tended to conflate assessment with testing and believed that testing had a negative impact on classroom as the students and actually also teachers focus on test scores and not on overall language development. Teachers experienced assessment as an external force rather than, the internal force that guided and helped with their teaching and learning. And teaching had little input into assessment policy of their institutions. Our research would love to bring about the following impact. In terms of theory, we believe that the linking of language assessment literacy with the promotion of fairness and equity will develop the understanding of the concepts of LAL and the ways in which it can be leveraged to develop classroom practice. In terms of policy, we involve the policymakers and other stakeholders in the project from the beginning to the end. And it is actually the project was book-ended by the two policy dialogues. And in this case, this country spotlight is considered to be of that action. And the project will bring the teacher voice into policy discussions with the aims of developing policies which better reflect the teaching realities. And in our project, we bring about their voices also in the focus group discussions, which I will talk about further later in my presentation. In terms of practice, our project would love to bring about the findings and would help the teachers to have access to online training materials tailor-made for the Vietnamese context, and especially for not only the practices, but also suit the recently introduced curriculum. And through the online community of practice, teachers can share good assessment ideas and practice. And I now will talk about the methodology of the research. We adopted the multi-method approach for our research. We use questionnaires and with the teachers, and then which will be followed by focus group discussions of teachers. And also we would do the evaluation of assessment materials. And after that, we would have the interviews with the key stakeholders, including the officials at the ministry and the provincial levels to explore their voices. In terms of the questionnaires, that will be developed from an existing instrument introduced by Sheehan and Munro in 2019, which focuses on the beliefs, the practices, and the context of teachers in relation to assessment. And following the questionnaires, we will conduct the focus group discussions, 8 focus group discussions, to enrich the questionnaire data. And the participants for these discussions will be drawn from the questionnaire respondents. The focus group discussion participants will be requested to bring in examples of an assessment they have created, and they will be asked to explain how the tools were created and implemented, and discuss any constraints or any shortcomings, any challenges they face in using and creating them. This follows the recommended by Villa Larenas in 2021. The materials will then be analyzed by the research team to identify the information relating to assessment knowledge and practices in Vietnam. And we will conduct classroom observations and interviews. 8 lessons will be observed and videotaped using an observation schedule developed by Sheehan and Munro 2017, and also introduced and discussed in greater details in 2019. The observed lessons will be delivered into 4 levels of education in Vietnam, from primary level, lower and upper secondary school level, and tertiary levels. And we will cover both state and private institutions. To develop an understanding of the thinking behind the assessment activities observed, the teachers will be interviewed by members of our team from ULIS. And these are the 2 major outputs of our research. First, there will be an online toolkit, and the toolkits will be on assessment and testing resources, and that will also provide recommendations for best practice, which respond to teachers' needs, attitudes, and practices that we gain from the data of the research. And the second output of the research will be an online community of practice, and that will be hosted by ULIS and supported by the University of Huddersfield. And that is aimed to support for the growth of assessment expertise. And the 2 outputs linked between the recommendation and theories with the actual practice of the teachers in Vietnam. So this is the idea that we bring in as the impact of the project on the field of assessment and education in Vietnam, and especially on professional developments of Vietnamese teachers. So the toolkits, as I said, will contain 6 sections, which reflect the issues which has been identified in the data as being of concern to the teachers. And the materials will be available in both languages, Vietnamese and English. And the materials will have the same format as those created previously in also by the major investigator of our research, Dr. Susan Sheehan and her colleague, Professor Munro. But the content will reflect the Vietnamese context, and especially the new recently introduced curriculum in 2018 and other relevant national examinations. On the screen, you will see a sample toolkit, a sample from the toolkit that is used, that was developed by Sheehan and Munro in their research, and from the University of Huddersfield. So they, like here, they will talk about the importance of LTA, the language testing and assessment, and also sometimes they bring in the commentary as well for the teachers. And if you are interested in learning more about our toolkits, you may have a look at these 2 websites with the in which we provide the discussions. Not Dr. Sheehan and her colleagues provided the thorough introductions and discussion of the toolkits, and also the resources there. So you can actually scan the barcode, the QR code, if you are interested in having a better look at the toolkits. And in terms of the next step, we would like to take this opportunity to invite you to be involved, to get involved in our research in 2 ways. First, you may want to take part in our stakeholder interviews later on. And please just let us know, and we would love to welcome your participation in our research. And we also would like to invite you to join our policy dialogue due in 2023. And after we have developed the toolkits, revised the toolkits, introduced the toolkits, and also develop our COP for the teachers in Vietnam. And here are the references for our research and my own presentation. And I'd like to thank you very much for listening, and we welcome any questions from you and any comments. Thank you very much again.
Thanks very much, Quynh. That's great. It's really interesting to hear about your research that's going to be forthcoming in the next 12 months. I'm not sure, myself and Q have been monitoring the chat box for any questions. I'm not sure if we have any questions at the moment, Q?
No, I think it's quite a very new and exciting project that people yeah. want to have to think about it, because it's obviously very broad.
Yeah. Can I ask maybe 1 or 2 questions, Quynh? Because I think we've got about 5 or 10 minutes before we have to bring the session to a close. I was very interested when you were talking about the background from the previous, the Berish, Sheehan and Munro session, research. And I was curious to hear some of the mention of teachers' perceptions of the relationship between teaching, learning and assessment, and particularly how they can often conflate assessment with testing. I wonder if you could talk a little bit more about that and how that might inform your research going forward, particularly from your experience of of here in Vietnam and working with teachers in Vietnam?
Oh yes, actually we from the research by Barry, Sheehan, and Munro, they actually found that teachers try to separate the assessment practices from their own teaching, and the assessment, and they, number one, they tend to think of assessment just limited to the tests themselves, and most of all of the time would be the summative test actually. And also they, for that, they, most of them, and especially the students and also some most of the teachers believe that testing had a negative impact on the classroom, and the student just focus on the test scores, and they fear, okay, of the test, of the upcoming test, and they try their best just to gain the higher score rather than the showing or improving the or developing their competencies. So the test and the assessment from the teacher belief, they are the job from the external kind of forces, or some by someone else who would evaluate the quality of their learning and of their teaching. So they are trying to separate that assessment with and their teaching practices, and the assessment for them mostly just limited to the test.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And we've got a question from Jamie Dunley, which is great. We'll come on to your question in just a moment, Jamie. But I've got one more question for you, Quynh. You talked also about the 2018 curriculum and the changes there. Could you say a little bit more about that and how that might impact, again, that relationship between summative assessment and formative assessment, assessment of learning, assessment for learning? Maybe say a little bit more about that before we move on to Jamie's question.
Oh yes, for the new curriculum 2018, we focus very much more on the competencies and of the learners, and so the learner will be expected to learn the major competencies, and you know, like problem solving and many other competencies, not only just the knowledge, and for that assessment will be more on that case as well. We do not just focus on the assessment of knowledge and skills, but also the assessment is considered to be an integral part or during the process of teaching. So classroom-based assessment in that sense would be of greater importance, so that the assessment itself can guide, can help and facilitate the learning and the teaching in order to meet the expected learning outcomes of the students.
And do you think, from your experience, Quynh, do you think that will be a significant change for most English language teachers here in Vietnam? Do you think that transition from both for the teachers and for the learners away from kind of summative tests more towards that kind of formative assessment?
Well, I would say it is actually before the new curriculum was introduced in 2018. We have been focusing on the shift, not the shift, I would not say the shift, but more on putting more attention and on the improvement of classroom-based assessment, on the especially on the formative assessment. But I would say with the new introduction of the new curriculum, this focus and this there would be more efforts in improving the quality and especially of the practices, and especially changing the belief and the attitudes of the teachers on classroom-based assessment.
Yeah, my experience as well, I can see that would be, as you say, maybe not a shift, but that transition in their thinking, perhaps. Thanks for that, Quynh. Let's move to Jamie's question, which is a really good one. He's asking and wants to know more about the community of practice and how that will work, because again, I think you've also got, from your work with ULIS, you've had some experience of using communities of practice as well. Maybe you can share a bit of background and information about that, because Jamie thinks it's a great idea and a potentially powerful agent for change. So it'd be great to hear a little bit more about your plans for that.
Yes, thank you very much, Jamie, for these questions. And actually, it's also gives me the chance to elaborate more on our view of the COP and why this is actually the value that ULIS can bring in this project. So ULIS is actually a leading institution in English teacher education development, actually. So with this, the COP would be the platform to link the pre-service teachers, in-service teachers, the teacher trainers from ULIS, and also the experts from the University of Huddersfield. So number one, the COP would be the platform to bring in different groups of practitioners and also the theorists and researchers, and especially we bring in the novice and more experienced practitioners together. So that would bring in that kind of platform. And so as I mentioned in my presentation, the COP will be hosted by the University of Languages and International Studies, ULIS, because we can bring in so the future teachers, the in-service teachers, sharing their own experience and also talking about the challenges, the problem they can face, and the teacher trainers from ULIS can help bring in from the theorist, and also from their own kind of experience in teaching at the tertiary levels. So this is COP is indeed, it's like the can bring in the multi-stakeholders, and that is why we would love to bring in, like COP would love to bring in and create the impact on the improvement and the strengthening of classroom-based assessment throughout Vietnam.
Thanks, Quynh. Oh, yeah, it's a really interesting concept, that idea of bringing together, as you said, that the theoretical stakeholders, practical stakeholders, the novice teachers, the experienced teachers, to discuss and share ideas and experiences about with assessment and different forms of assessment. Maybe I think we've got time for maybe one more question. It's kind of related as well, I think, to the outputs from the research project over the next 12 months. So you also, as well as the community of practice, you've also talked about the development of a toolkit. And how would that relate to, or how would that inform perhaps some of the discussions on the communities of practice on the COP platform?
Thank you. So the toolkit would provide like two things. The first one would be the guidance, and it's like a kind of a summary or a concise kind of really a toolkit or a manual for the teachers on testing and assessment. At the same time, the toolkits also provide recommendations for best practice, which has been developed and by from the data that we collected from the research. So we would showcase the recommendations and also sometimes the good samples of good assessments for the teacher, right. And also the resources, bring in other resources for the teachers as well. So the toolkit would be there for the student, for the teachers to explore, and they can then share the experience and their practices in the COP. So the toolkit and the COP designed to be in that kind of sense, link between the guidance and the actual practices of the teachers.
Right. Thanks. And we look forward to that. We look forward to working with you over the next 12 months. And as you said, learning more about the research, and particularly towards the end when we have the policy dialogues and some of those outputs as well. Okay, thanks very much, Quynh. I think I have to hand back to Q, our host for today. Thanks very much.
Yes, thank you. What's a lively discussion? I do believe that this is a very promising project, and I do believe a shout out to all the Vietnamese attendees and educators and teachers. This is a very new and good project. So if you guys like to continue this conversation or discussion with David and Quynh or any of your fellow attendees, feel free to use our community tab right at the top of your platform. And of course, do let us know your feedback on this particular section by answering the 2 short questions in the survey tab right next to your chat box. Well, we are coming to the end of this session. We thank you again for our 2 excellent speakers. Thank you, David. Thank you, Quynh, again. Thank you, our audience, for your participation, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Goodbye for now.
Okay, thanks, Quynh.
Thank you very much, David, and thank you, Q.
That was great. Thank you very much. It was a really good. Nice that we had a little bit of time at the end to have a little bit of a conversation and also get 1 question from Jamie as well.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks very much.
Thank
Talk
you,
to you
David.
soon, yeah?
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Yeah, thanks, Quynh. Bye for now. Thanks, Q. Bye for now.